didn't think it would like to listen, sir.
I'm sorry for that, for your sake. I don't play accurately. Anyone can play accurately. I play with wonderful expression. As far as the piano is concerned, sentiment is my forte. I keep science for life.
Yes, sir.
Speaking of the science of life, do you have the cucumber sandwiches cut for Lady Bracknell?
Yes, sir.
Oh, by the way, Lane, I saw from your book that on Thursday night, when Lord Shorman and Mr. Worthing were dining with me, 8 bottles of champagne were entered as having been consumed.
Yes, sir. 8 bottles and a pint.
Why is it that at a bachelor's establishment, the servants invariably drink the champagne?
I attribute it to the superior quality of the wine, sir. I found that at married establishments, the champagne is rarely of a first-rate brand.
Good heavens! Is marriage so demoralizing as that?
I believe it is a very pleasant state, sir. I have very little experience of it myself. I've only been married once, and that was of a consequence of a misunderstanding between myself and a young person.
I don't think I much care to hear about your family life, Lane.
No, sir, it is not very interesting. I never think of it myself, sir.
Very natural, I'm sure. That'll do, Lane.
Yes, sir.
Lane's views on marriage seem somewhat lax. I mean, really. If the lower orders don't set us a good example, what's the use of them? They seem as a class to have absolutely no sense of moral responsibility.
Mr. Ernest Worthing.
Ah. How are you, dear Ernest? What brings you up to town?
Oh, pleasure, pleasure. What should bring anyone anywhere? Huh. Eating as usual, I see, Algy.
I believe it's customary in good society to take some slight refreshment at 5 o'clock. Where have you been since Thursday?
In the country.
What on earth do you do there?
When one is in town, one amuses oneself. When one is in the country, one amuses other people. It is excessively boring.
And who are the people you amuse?
Neighbours. Neighbours.
Got nice neighbours in your part of Shropshire?
Perfectly horrid. Never speak to one of them.
How immensely you must amuse them. Oh, by the way, Shropshire is your county, is it not?
Eh? Shropshire? Oh, yes, yes. Ah, hello. Why all these cups? Why cucumber sandwiches? Why such reckless extravagance in one so young? Who is coming to tea?
Oh, merely Aunt Augusta and Gwendolyn.
How perfectly delightful.
Yes, that's all very well, but I don't think Aunt Augusta will quite approve of you being here.
May I ask why?
My dear fellow, the way you flirt with Gwendolyn is perfectly disgraceful. It's almost as bad as the way Gwendolyn flirts with you.
I'm in love with Gwendolyn. I've come up to town expressly to propose to her.
I thought you'd come up for pleasure. I call that business.
How utterly unromantic you are.
I really don't see anything romantic in proposing. It's perfectly romantic to be in love, but there's nothing romantic about a definite proposal. Why? One may be accepted. One usually is, I believe. And then the excitement is all over. The very essence of romance is uncertainty. If I ever get married, I shall certainly try to forget the fact.
I've no doubt about that, dear Algy. The divorce court was created specially for those whose memories are so curiously constituted.
There's no use speculating on that subject. Divorces were made in heaven. Please don't touch the cucumber sandwiches. They were ordered especially for Aunt Augusta.
But you have been eating them all the time.
Yes, that's quite a different matter. She's my aunt. You should have some bread and butter. The bread and butter is for Gwendolyn. Gwendolyn is devoted to bread and butter.
And very good bread and butter it is, too.
My dear fellow, you need not eat it as if you were going to eat at all. You act as if you were married to her already. You are not married to her already, and I don't think you ever will be.
Why on earth do you say that?
My dear fellow, girls never marry the men they flirt with. Girls don't think it right.
Oh, that is nonsense.
It isn't. It accounts for the extraordinary number of bachelors one sees all over the place. And in the second place, I don't give my consent.
Your consent?
My dear fellow, Gwendolyn is my first husband. And before I can allow you to marry her, you must clear up the whole question of Cecily.
Cecily? What on earth do you mean? What do you mean, Algy, by Cecily? I don't know anyone of the name of Cecily.
Bring me the cigarette case Mr. Worthing left in the smoking room last time we dined here.
Yes, sir.
Do you mean to say you have had my cigarette case this whole time? I wish to goodness you had let me know. I've been writing frantic letters to Scotland Yard about it. I was very nearly offering a large reward.
Well, I wish you would offer one. I happen to be more than usually hard up.
There is no use in offering a large reward now that the thing is found.
I think that's rather mean of you, Ernest, I must say. Thank you, Amy. However, it makes no matter. For now that I look at the inscription inside, I see the thing isn't yours after all.
Well, of course it's mine. You've seen me with it 100 times. And you've no right whatsoever to read what is written inside. It is a very ungentlemanly thing to read a private cigarette case.
Oh, it's absurd to have a hard and fast rule about what one should read and what one shouldn't. More than half of modern culture depends on what one shouldn't read.
I'm aware of the fact, and I don't intend on discussing modern culture. It is not the sort of thing one should talk of in private. I simply want my cigarette case back.
Yes, but this isn't your cigarette case. This cigarette case is a present from someone of the name of Cecily. And you said you didn't know anyone of that name.
Well, if you want to know, Cecily happens to be my aunt.
Your aunt?
Yes. Charming old lady she is, too. Lives at Tunbridge Wells. Just give it back to me, Algy.
Yes, but why does she call herself Little Cecily if she is your aunt and lives at Tunbridge Wells? From Little Cecily with her fondest love.
My dear fellow, what on earth is there in that? Some aunts are tall, some aunts are not tall. But it's a matter that surely an aunt may be allowed to decide for herself. You seem to think that every aunt should be exactly like your aunt. That is absurd. For heaven's sake, give me back my cigarette case.
Yes, but why does your aunt call you her uncle? From Little Cecily with her fondest love to her dear Uncle Jack. There is no objecting, I admit, to an aunt being a small aunt. But why an aunt, no matter what her size may be, should call her own nephew her uncle? I can't quite make out. Besides, your name isn't Jack at all. It's Earnest.
It isn't Earnest. It's Jack.
But you have always told me it was Earnest. I've introduced you to everyone as Earnest. You answer to the name of Earnest. You look as if your name is Earnest. You're the most earnest-looking person I ever saw in my life. It's perfectly absurd you're saying your name isn't Earnest. It's on your cards. Here is one of them. Mr. Ernest Worthing, B4 the Albany. I'll keep this as proof your name is Earnest, if ever you attempt to deny it to me, or to Gwendolyn, or to anyone else.
Well, my name is Ernest in town and Jack in the country. The cigarette case was given to me in the country.
Yes, but that does not account for the fact that your small Aunt Cecily, who lives at Tunbridge Wells, calls you her dear uncle. Come on, old boy, you had much better have the thing out at once.
My dear fellow, you talk exactly as if you were a dentist. It's very vulgar to talk like a dentist when one isn't a dentist. It produces a false impression.
That's exactly what dentists always do. Now go on, tell me the whole thing. I may mention that I've always suspected you of being confirmed in secret bunburyist, and I'm quite sure of it now.
Bunburyist? What do you mean by a bunburyist?
I will reveal to you the meaning of that incomparable expression as soon as you are kind enough to tell me why you were Ernest in town and Jack in the country.
Well, produce my cigarette case first.
Here it is. Now produce your explanation, and pray, make it improbable.
My dear fellow, there is nothing improbable about my explanation at all. In fact, it is perfectly ordinary. Old Mr. Thomas Cardew, who adopted me when I was a little boy, made me in his will guardian to his granddaughter, Miss Cecily Cardew. Cecily, who addresses me as her uncle, from motives that you could not possibly appreciate, lives at my place in the country, under the charge of her admirable governess, Miss Prison.
Where is that place in the country, by the way?
That is nothing to you, dear boy. You are not going to be invited. I can tell you candidly that the place is not in Shropshire.
I suspected that much, my dear fellow. I have bunburyed all over Shropshire on 2 separate occasions. Now go on. Why are you Ernest in town with Jack in the country?
My dear fellow, I don't know if you will be able to understand my real motives. You are hardly serious enough. When one is placed in the position of guardian, one has to adopt a very high moral tone on all subjects. It's one's duty to do so. And as a very high moral tone can hardly be said to conduce much in either one's health or one's happiness, in order to get up to town, I have always pretended to have a younger brother of the name of Earnest, who lives in the Albany and who gets into the most dreadful scrapes. That, my dear fellow, is the whole truth, pure and simple.
The truth is rarely pure and never simple. Modern culture would be very tedious if it were either, and modern literature a complete impossibility.
That would not at all be a bad thing.
Literary criticism is not your forte, my dear fellow. Don't try it. You should leave it to people who haven't been at university. They do it so well in the daily papers. What you really are is a bunburyist. I was quite right in saying you're a bunburyist. Why, you are one of the most advanced bunburyists I know.
What on earth do you mean?
You have invented a very useful younger brother so that you may be able to come up to town as often as you like. I have invented an invaluable permanent invalid so that I may be able to go down to the country whenever I choose. Bunbury is perfectly invaluable. If it weren't for Bunbury's extraordinary bad health, for instance, I wouldn't be able to dine with you tonight at Willis's. For I've already been engaged to Aunt Augusta for more than a week.
I haven't asked you to dine with me anywhere tonight.
I know. You're absurdly careless about sending out invitations. It's very foolish of you. Nothing annoys people more than not receiving invitations.
You had much better dine with your Aunt Augusta.
I haven't the smallest intention of doing anything of the kind. To begin with, I dine there on Monday, and once a week is quite enough to dine with one's own relations. In the second place, whenever I do dine there, I'm always treated as a member of the family, and either seated with no women at all, or two. In the third place, I know perfectly well whom she will place me next to tonight. She will place me next to Mary Farquhar, who always flirts with her own husband across the dinner table. It's not particularly pleasant. Indeed, it's not even decent. And that sort of thing is enormously on the increase. The amount of women in London who flirt with their own husbands is perfectly scandalous. It looks so bad. It is simply washing one's clean linen in public. Besides, now that I know you to be a confirmed bunburyist, I naturally want to talk to you about Bunbury. I want to tell you the rules.
I'm not a bunburyist at all. If Gwendolen accepts me, I'm going to kill my brother. In fact, I think I'll get rid of him in any case. Cecily is a little too much interested in him. It is rather a bore. So I'm going to get rid of Earnest. And I strongly advise you to do the same with your, your invalid friend with the absurd name.
Nothing will induce me to part with Bunbury. And if you ever get married, which seems to me to be extremely problematic, you would do very well to know Bunbury. A man who marries without knowing Bunbury has a very tedious time of it.
Oh, that is nonsense. If I were to marry Gwendolen, and she is the only girl in the world I would marry, I certainly wouldn't want to know Bunbury.
Then your wife will. You don't seem to realize that in married life, 3 is company, 2 is none.
That, my young friend, is the theory that the corrupt French drama has been propounding for the last 50 years.
Yes, and that the happy English home has proved in half the time.
Don't try and be cynical. It's perfectly easy to be cynical.
My dear fellow, it isn't easy to be anything nowadays. There's so much beastly competition about. That must be Aunt Augusta. Only relatives or creditors ring in that Wagnerian manner. Now, if I can get her away for 10 minutes, so that you may have an opportunity for proposing to Gwendolen, may I dine with you tonight at Willis's?
Yes, I suppose so, if you want to.
But you must be serious about it. I hate people who aren't serious about meals. It's so shallow.
Lady Bracknell in Miss Fairfax.
Good afternoon, Algernon. I hope you're behaving very well.
Well, I am feeling very well, Aunt Augusta.
That's not quite the same thing. In fact, the two things rarely go together.
Dear me, you are smart.
I'm always smart, aren't I, Mr. Worthing?
You're quite perfect, Miss Fairfax.
Oh, I hope I am not that. But that would leave no room for developments, and I intend to develop in many directions.
I'm sorry we're a little late. I was obliged to call on dear Lady Harbury. I hadn't seen her since her poor husband's death. I've never seen a woman so altered. She looks quite 20 years younger. Now I'll have a cup of tea and one of those nice cucumber sandwiches you promised me.
Certainly, Aunt Augusta.
Gwendolyn, won't you come and sit here?
Thanks, Mamma. I'm quite comfortable where I am.
Good heavens! Lady, why are there no cucumber sandwiches? I ordered them specially.
There were no cucumbers in the market this morning, sir. I went down twice.
No cucumbers?
No, sir, not even for ready money.
That'll do. Thank you, lady.
Thank you, sir.
I am greatly distressed, Aunt Augusta, for there being no cucumbers. Not even for ready money.
It really makes no matter, Algernon. I had some crumpets with dear Lady Harbury. Who seems to me to be living entirely for pleasure now.
Yes, I hear her hair has turned quite gold from grief.
It certainly has changed color. From what cause, I of course cannot say. Thank you, Algernon. I've quite a treat for you tonight. I'm going to send you down with Mary Farquhar. She's such a nice woman, and so attentive to her husband. It's delightful to watch them.
I am afraid, Aunt Augusta, that I must give up the pleasure of dining with you this evening after all.
It is very strange. I hope not, Algernon. It certainly would put my table completely out. Your uncle would have to dine upstairs. Fortunately, he's accustomed to that.
Yes, it is a great bore, and I need hardly say a terrible disappointment to me. But the fact of the matter is that my poor friend Bunbury is very ill again. They seem to think I should be with him.
It is very strange. This Mr. Bunbury seems to suffer from curiously bad health.
Yes, poor Bunbury is a dreadful invalid.
Well, I must say, Algernon, I think it's high time that Mr. Bunbury made up his mind. Whether he's going to live or die, this shilly-shallying around with the question is absurd. Nor do I in any way approve of this modern sympathy with invalids. I consider it morbid. Illness is hardly a thing to be encouraged in others. Health is the primary duty of life. And I'm always telling that to your poor uncle, but he never seems to take much notice. As far as any improvements in his health goes, I'll be much obliged if you would ask Mr. Bunbury for me, if you would be kind enough not to have a relapse on Saturday, for I rely on you to arrange my music for me. It is my last reception, and one wants something that will encourage conversation, particularly at the end of the season when everyone has practically said whatever they had to say, which in most cases was probably not much.
Yes, I'll speak to Bunbury, Aunt Augusta, if he is still conscious. And I think I can promise he'll be all right by Saturday. The music, of course, is a great difficulty. You see, if one plays good music, people don't listen. And if one plays bad music, people don't talk. But I'll run over the program I've drawn up, if you'll kindly come into the next room for a moment.
Thank you, Algernon. It's very thoughtful of you. I'm sure the program will be delightful after a few explanations. French songs we cannot possibly allow. People always seem to think they're improper, and either look shocked, which is vulgar, or laugh, which is worse. But German sounds a thoroughly respectable language, and indeed I believe is so. Gwendolyn, you'll accompany me.
Certainly, Mamma.
Charming day it has been, Miss Fairfax.
Pray don't talk to me about the weather, Mrs. Worthing. Whenever people talk to me about the weather, I feel quite certain that they mean something else. That makes me so nervous.
I do mean something else.
I thought so. In fact, I am never wrong.
And I would like to take advantage of Lady Bracknell's temporary absence.
I would certainly advise you to do so. Mamma has a way of coming back suddenly into a room that I have often had to speak to her about.
Miss Fairfax, ever since I met you, I have admired you more than any girl I have ever met since I met you.
Yes, I'm quite aware of the fact, and I often wish that in public, at any rate, you had been more demonstrative. For me, you have always had an irresistible fascination. Even before I met you, I was far from indifferent to you. We live, as I hope you know, Mr. Wilde, in an age of ideals. The fact is constantly mentioned in the more expensive monthly magazines, and has even reached the provincial pulpits, I am told. And my ideal has always been to love someone of the name of Earnest. There is something in that name that inspires absolute confidence. The moment Algernon told me he had a friend named Earnest, I knew I was destined to love you.
You really love me, Gwendolen?
Passionately.
Oh, darling, you don't know how happy you've made me.
My own Earnest.
But you don't really mean to say that you couldn't love me if my name wasn't Ernest?
But your name is Earnest.
Well, yes, I know it is, but supposing it was something else. Do you mean to say that you couldn't love me then?
Ah, that is clearly a metaphysical speculation. And like most metaphysical speculations, bears very little relation at all to the actual facts of real life as we know them.
Well, personally, darling, to speak quite candidly, I don't much care about the name of Ernest. I don't think the name suits me at all.
It suits you perfectly. It is a divine name. It has a music of its own. It produces vibrations.
Well, really, darling, I must say that I think there are other, much nicer names. I think Jack, for instance, a charming name.
Jack? No. There is very little music in the name Jack, if any at all, indeed. It does not thrill. It produces absolutely no vibrations. I've known several Jacks, and they all, without exception, were more than usually plain. Besides, Jack is notorious domesticity for John. And I pity any woman who is married to a man named John. She would probably never be allowed to know the entrancing pleasure of a single moment's solitude. The only really safe name is Earnest.
Gwendolen, I must get christened at once. I mean, we must get married at once. There is no time to be lost.
Married, Mr. Worthing?
Well, surely, you know that I love you, and you led me to believe, Miss Fairfax, that you are not absolutely indifferent to me.
I adore you, but you haven't proposed to me yet. Nothing at all has been said about marriage. The subject hasn't even been touched on.
May I propose to you now?
I think it would be an admirable opportunity to do so. And to spare you any possible disappointment, Mr. Worthing, I feel it only fair to tell you quite frankly beforehand that I am fully determined to accept you.
Oh. Gwendolen!
Yes, Mr. Worthing? What have you got to say to me?
You know what I've got to say to you.
Yes, but you don't say it.
Gwendolen, will you marry me?
Of course I will, darling. How long you have been about it. I'm afraid you have had very little experience in how to propose.
My own one, I've never loved anyone in the world but you.
Yes, but men often propose for practice. I know my brother Gerald does. All my girlfriends tell me so. What wonderfully blue eyes you have, Ernest. They are quite blue. I hope you will always look at me in that way, especially when there are other people present.
Mr. Wilde!
Oh.
Rise, sir, from the second recumbent posture. It is most indecorous.
Mamma, I must beg you to retire. This is no place for you. Besides, Mr. Worthing's not quite finished yet.
Finished what, may I ask?
I am engaged to Mr. Worthing, Mamma.
Pardon me, but you are not engaged to anyone. When you do become engaged to someone, I, or your father, should as health permit, will inform you of the fact. An engagement should come on a girl as a surprise, pleasant or unpleasant, as the case may be. It's hardly a matter that a girl should be allowed to arrange for herself. And now, I have some questions to put to you, Mr. Worthing. And while I am making these inquiries, you, Gwendolyn, will wait for me below in the carriage.
Oh, Mamma!
In the carriage, Gwendolyn. The carriage, Gwendolyn.
Yes, Mamma.
You can take a seat, Mr. Worthing.
Thank you, Lady Bracknell. I prefer standing.
I feel bound to tell you that you are not down on my list of eligible young men, although I have the same list as the dear Duchess of Bolton has. We work together, in fact. However, I'm quite ready to enter your name, should your answers be what a really affectionate mother requires. Do you smoke?
Well, yes, I must admit I smoke.
I'm glad to hear it. A man should always have an occupation of some kind. There are far too many idle men in London as it is. How old are you?
29.
Very good age to be married at. I've always been of the opinion that a man who desires to get married should know everything or nothing. Which do you know?
I know nothing, Lady Bracknell.
I'm pleased to hear it. I do not approve of anything that tampers with natural ignorance. Ignorance is like a delicate, exotic fruit. Touch it, and the bloom is gone. The whole theory of modern education is radically unsound. Fortunately, in England, at any rate, education produces no effect whatsoever. If it did, it would prove a serious danger to the upper classes and probably lead to acts of violence in Grosvenor Square. What is your income?
Between 7,000 and 8,000 a year.
In land or investments?
In investments, chiefly.
That sounds satisfactory. What between the duties expected from one during one's lifetime and the duties exacted from one after one's death, land has ceased to be either a profit or a pleasure. It gives one position and prevents one from keeping it up. That is all that can be said about land.
I own a house in the country, of course, with some land attached to it. About 1,500 acres, but I don't depend on that for my real income. In fact, as far as I can make out, the poachers are the only ones who make anything of it.
A country house? How many bedrooms? Well, that point can be cleared up afterwards. You have a townhouse, I hope. A girl with a simple, unspoiled nature like Gwendolyn could hardly be expected to reside in the country.
Well, I own a house in Belgrave Square, but it is let by the year to a Lady Bloxham. Of course, I can get it back whenever I like, at 6 months' notice.
Lady Bloxham? I don't know her.
Oh, she goes about very little. She is a lady considerably advanced in years.
Ah, nowadays, that is no guarantee of respectability of character. What number in Belgrave Square?
149?
Oh, the unfashionable side. I thought there was something. Well, however, that could easily be altered.
Do you mean the fashion or the side?
Both, if necessary, I presume. What are your politics?
Well, I'm afraid I really have none. I'm a liberal unionist.
They count as Tories. They dine with us, or come in the evening at any rate. Now, on to minor matters. Are your parents living?
I have lost both my parents.
Both? To lose one parent, Mr. Worthing, may be regarded as a misfortune. But to lose both looks like carelessness. Who was your father? He was evidently a man of some wealth. Was he born into what the radical papers call the purple of commerce? Or did he rise from the ranks of aristocracy?
Well, I'm afraid I really don't know, Lady Bracknell. The fact is, I said that I lost my parents. It would be nearer the truth to say that my parents seem to have lost me. I don't actually know who I am by birth. I was, well, I was found.
Found?
The late Mr. Thomas Cardew, an old gentleman of a very charitable and kindly disposition, found me and gave me the name of Worthing because he happened to have a first-class ticket to Worthing in his pocket at the time. Worthing is a place in Sussex. It is a seaside resort.
Where did this charitable gentleman who had a first-class ticket to a seaside resort find you?
In a handbag.
A handbag?
Yes, Lady Bracknell. I was in a handbag. A somewhat large, black leather handbag with handles to it. A perfectly ordinary handbag, in fact.
In what locality did this Mr. James or Thomas Cardew come across this ordinary handbag?
In the cloakroom of Victoria Station. It was given to him in mistake for his own.
The cloakroom of Victoria Station?
Yes. The right in line.
The line is immaterial. Mr. Worthing, I confess I am somewhat bewildered by what you have just told me. To be born, or at any rate bred, in a handbag, whether it had handles or not, seems to me to display a contempt for the ordinary decencies of family life that remind one of the worst excesses of the French Revolution. And I presume you know what that unfortunate movement led to. As for the particular locality in which the handbag was found, a cloakroom and a railway station might serve to conceal a social indiscretion. It has probably indeed been used for that purpose before now, but it could hardly be regarded as an assured basis for recognized position in good society.
May I ask you then what you would advise me to do? I need hardly say I would do anything in the world to ensure Gwendolyn's happiness.
I would strongly advise you to try to acquire some relations as soon as possible, and to produce at any rate at least one parent of either sex before the season is quite over.
Well, no, I don't see how I could possibly manage to do that. I can produce the handbag for you at any moment. It is in my dressing room at home. I really think that should satisfy you, Lady Bracknell.
Lisa, what has it got to do with me? You can hardly imagine that Lord Bracknell and I would ever dream of allowing our only daughter, a girl brought up with the utmost care, to marry into a cloakroom and form an alliance with a parcel. Good morning, Mr. Worthing.
Good morning. For goodness sake, Algy, don't play that ghastly tune! How idiotic you are!
Did it go off all right, old boy? You don't mean to say Gwendolyn refused you. I know, it's a way she has. She's always refusing people.
Oh, Gwendolyn is right as a trivet. As far as she is concerned, we are engaged. Her mother is perfectly unbearable. Never met such a gorgon. I don't know what a gorgon is like, but I'm quite sure she is one. In any case, she is a monster without being a myth. which is rather unfair of me, Algy. I beg your pardon. I suppose I shouldn't speak to you of your own aunt in this manner before you.
My dear boy, I love hearing my relations abused. It's the only thing that makes me put up with them at all. Relations are simply a tedious pack of people who haven't the remotest knowledge of how to live, nor the smallest instinct of when to die.
Oh, that is nonsense.
It isn't.
Well, I won't argue with you about the matter. You always want to argue about things.
That's what things were originally made for.
Ugh, upon my word, if I thought that, I'd shoot myself. You don't suppose that there's any chance of Gwendolen becoming like a mother in about 150 years, do you, Algy?
All women become like their mothers. That is their tragedy. No man does. That's his.
Is that clever?
Why, it's perfectly phrased, and quite as true as any observation in civilized life should be.
Sick to death of cleverness. Everyone is clever nowadays. You can't go anywhere without meeting clever people. The thing has become an absolute public nuisance. I wish to goodness we still had a few fools left.
We have.
Oh, I should extremely like to meet them. What do they talk about?
The clever people? Of course.
What fools.
Oh, by the way, did you tell Gwendolen the truth about your being Earnest in town and Jack in the country?
My dear fellow, the truth is not the sort of thing one tells to a nice, sweet, refined girl. What extraordinary ideas you have about how to behave to a woman.
My dear fellow, the only way to behave to a woman is to make love to her if she's pretty, or to someone else if she's plain.
Oh, that is nonsense.
It isn't. By the way, what about your brother? What of the profligate Earnest?
Oh, by the end of the week I shall have got rid of him. I shall say he died in Paris of apoplexy. Lots of people die of apoplexy quite suddenly, don't they?
Yes, but it's hereditary, my dear fellow. It's the sort of thing that runs in families. You would much better say a severe chill.
You're quite sure a severe chill isn't hereditary or anything of that kind?
Of course it isn't.
Very well. My poor brother Ernest is carried off in Paris by a severe chill. That gets rid of him.
But I thought you said Miss Cardew was a little too much interested in your poor brother. Won't you feel his loss a great deal?
Oh, that is all right. Cecily is not some silly romantic girl, I'm glad to say. She goes on long walks, has a capital appetite, and pays no attention at all to her lessons.
I should rather like to meet Cecily.
I will take very good care to make sure you never do. She is excessively pretty and she is only just 18.
Have you told Gwendolen you have an excessively pretty ward who is only just 18?
Oh, one doesn't blurt these things out to people. Cecily and Gwendolen are perfectly certain to become extremely great friends. I bet you anything you like that half an hour after they have met, they will be calling each other sister.
Women only do that when they've called each other a lot of other things first. Now, if we want to get a good table at Willis's, we better go up and change. Do you know it's nearly 7?
It is always nearly 7.
Well, I'm hungry.
I never knew you when you weren't.
What shall we do after dinner? Go to the theatre?
Oh no, I loathe listening.
Well, why not go to the club?
Oh no, I hate talking.
We might trot around the Empire at 10.
Oh, no, I can't bear looking at things. It's so silly.
Then what shall we do?
Nothing.
It's awfully hard work doing nothing. Although, I don't mind work when there is no definite object of any kind.
Miss Fairfax.
Gwendolen, upon my word.
Algy, kindly turn your back. I have something very particular to say to Mr. Worthing.
Really, Gwendolen, I don't think I can allow this at all.
Algy, you always adopt a strictly immoral attitude towards life. You're not quite old enough to do that.
My own darling.
Ernest, we may never be married. From the expression on Mamma's face, I fear we never shall. Few parents nowadays pay any regard to what their children say to them. The old-fashioned respect for the young is fast dying out. Whatever influence I ever had over Mamma, I lost at the age of 3. But although she may prevent us from becoming man and wife, and I may marry someone else, and marry often, nothing she can possibly do can alter my eternal devotion to you.
Dear Gwendolyn.
The story of your romantic origin, as related to me by Mamma, with unpleasing comments, has naturally stirred the deeper fibers of my nature. Your Christian name has an irresistible fascination. The simplicity of your character makes you exquisitely incomprehensible to me. Your town address is Albany I have. What is your address in the country?
The Manor House, Wilton, Hertfordshire.
There is a good postal service, I suppose. It may be necessary to do something desperate. That, of course, will require serious consideration. I will communicate with you daily.
My own darling.
How long do you remain in town?
Till Monday.
Good. Algie, you may turn around now.
Thanks, I turned around already.
You may also ring the bell.
You will let me walk you to your carriage, my own darling?
Certainly.
I will see Miss Fairfax out.
A glass of sherry, Lane.
Yes, sir.
Tomorrow, Lane, I'm going Bunburying.
Yes, sir.
I should probably not be back until Monday. You can pack my dress clothes, my smoking jacket, and all the Bunbury suits.
Yes, sir.
I hope tomorrow will be a fine day, Lane.
It never is, sir.
Lane, you're a perfect pessimist.
I do my best to give satisfaction, sir.
There's a nice, sensible, intellectual girl. The only girl I ever cared for in my life. What on earth are you so amused at?
Oh, I'm merely anxious about poor Bunbury, that's all.
If you don't take care, your poor friend Bunbury is going to get you into a serious scrape someday.
Oh, I love scrapes. They're the only things that are never serious.
That is nonsense. Never talk anything but nonsense.
Nobody ever does.
Mr. Moncrief will go to the countryside for his Bunburying. During his preparation, we will give a 15-minute intermission. Thank